help! Somebody, please! I can't swim! I can't—
Hold on! Don't let go!
I can't swim! I can't! It's too strong! The water's pulling me!
I got you! Stop kicking!
Don't let me drown! Please! Please! Her fingers slipped. He caught them again. The current dragged them both under. A 19-year-old kid with no home, no family, no one looking for him, throwing his life away for a woman he'd never met. They vanished beneath the surface. But Bryce Foster had no idea that what he just did would reach the ears of the most dangerous biker in 3 counties. And that man was about to make sure Bryce never slept on the street again. Man, but here's the crazy part. None of this was supposed to happen. Let me take you back. 3 weeks before that river swallowed him whole, Bryce Foster woke up behind a laundromat on Cedar Street. Not inside it, behind it, wedged between the back wall and a chain-link fence, where the dryer vents pushed out warm air that smelled like fabric softener and somebody else's life. He was 19. He'd been sleeping here since March. The owner, a heavy-set woman named Gloria, knew he was there. She never said a word about it. Once a week, she left a plastic bag by the dumpster with a day-old sandwich and a bottle of water. She never handed it to him directly. That would have made it real. And real things required decisions she didn't want to make. Bryce understood that. He understood a lot of things people assumed he didn't. He'd been in the foster system since he was 8. His mother left one morning to buy cigarettes and never came back. No note, no phone call, no forwarding address, just an empty apartment and a kid sitting on the kitchen floor, waiting. 6 foster homes in 10 years. Some were fine, most were not. The last one, the Graysons, had 3 other kids and not enough patience for any of them. When Bryce turned 18, they shook his hand, wished him luck, and closed the door behind him. That was it. That was the system's version of a graduation ceremony. For the first few months, he picked up odd jobs, washing dishes at a diner off Route 12, stacking pallets at a warehouse that paid cash, sweeping the parking lot at a church that let him use the bathroom on Sundays. But jobs without an address don't last. Employers want a phone number. Landlords want a deposit. Banks want ID that hasn't expired. And the world keeps spinning while you stand still, trying to figure out which door to knock on next. By winter, Bryce had stopped knocking. He carried everything he owned in a gray backpack with a broken zipper. 2 shirts, a pair of jeans, a toothbrush with frayed bristles he'd picked up from a shelter bin, and a college algebra textbook he'd found in a dumpster behind the community college. The cover was warped from rain. Half the pages had coffee stains. He didn't care. He read it at night under the glow of the laundromat's security light. Not because anyone told him to, not because it was going to get him anywhere, but because the numbers made sense when nothing else did. X plus Y equals Z. There was always an answer. You just had to work through the steps. Nobody in town really saw Bryce. He moved through the streets like weather, present but unremarkable. The grocery store clerk looked past him. The gas station attendant waved him off when he asked about work. The teenagers at the park called him that guy and moved their bags closer when he walked by. He wasn't dangerous. He wasn't loud. He wasn't anything to anyone. Just a 19-year-old kid with a torn hoodie, a broken backpack, and a math book he couldn't stop reading. The town was called Ridgeton. Population 4,000 and change. Nestled along the Cumberland River in eastern Tennessee, where the hills rolled green in the summer and the winters cut through you like a sermon you didn't want to hear. Bryce walked the river trail most afternoons, not for exercise, not for peace, because the trail ran behind the commercial district, away from the main sidewalks, away from the looks, away from the people who made him feel like a stain on their morning. The river didn't care who he was. It just kept moving, and in 3 weeks, that same river would try to kill him. It had rained for 2 days straight, not the soft kind that makes everything smell clean, the heavy kind. The kind that turns dirt paths into mud rivers and makes the Cumberland swell until it swallows the lower bank whole. By Thursday afternoon, the water was running fast and brown, carrying branches and trash and anything else that wasn't bolted down. The town had put up orange cones near the footbridge. A paper sign taped to a post read, "Stay back from the river's edge." Bryce saw the sign. He kept walking. The trail was empty. Everyone with somewhere to be was already there. Everyone with a home was inside it. Bryce had neither, so he walked, hands in his pockets, head down, the algebra textbook in his backpack pressing into his spine like a quiet promise nobody had made him. He passed the old mill bridge, past the picnic tables chained to concrete slabs, past the spot where teenagers left beer cans and cigarette butts on Friday nights. The air smelled like wet earth and rust. He was thinking about quadratic equations when he heard it. A scream. Not a playful one. Not kids messing around by the bank. This was the kind of sound that comes from a body that knows it's about to die. Raw. Desperate. The kind that makes your stomach drop before your brain catches up. He stopped, turned toward the river. A woman, mid-20s. She was in the water, maybe 40 feet from the bank, arms thrashing, head going under, coming back up, going under again. Her jacket had ballooned with air, but it was dragging her sideways now, pulling her toward the center of the current, where the river ran fastest and deepest. She screamed again. The word came out broken, half swallowed by water. "Help!" Then she went under and didn't come back up. Bryce dropped his backpack. He didn't take off his shoes. He didn't look for a branch or a rope or a rock to throw. He didn't call 911 because he didn't own a phone. He didn't weigh the odds. He didn't think about what happens to a homeless kid with no insurance who drowns in a river nobody asked him to jump into. He ran. The rocks along the bank were slick with rain and river spray. He slipped twice, caught himself on his palms, kept going. He could see her hand, just her hand, breaking the surface of the brown water like it was reaching for something that wasn't there. 20 feet. 10 feet. He hit the water at full sprint. The cold was instant. It seized his chest like a fist and squeezed the air out of him. His legs went numb in seconds. The current was stronger than it looked, 10 times stronger, and it grabbed him the moment he was waist deep, pulling him sideways, pulling him downstream, pulling him under. He kicked, found the surface, gasped. She was 5 feet ahead of him now, eyes wide, mouth open but no sound coming out anymore. She'd stopped screaming. That was worse. People who are fighting make noise. People who've given up go quiet. "Grab my hand!" he yelled. She couldn't hear him, or couldn't move. Her arms had gone still. She was sinking, slow and heavy, like the river had already made up its mind. Bryce swam harder than he'd ever swum in his life. 3 strokes. 4. His fingers touched fabric, her jacket sleeve, and he grabbed it with everything he had left. She grabbed back, both hands, locked onto his arm like a vice. And then the river pulled them both under. The world went dark and cold and impossibly loud. Water filled his nose, his ears, his mouth. The current spun him sideways, and he lost all sense of direction. Up, down, left, right. It all became the same brown nothing. His lungs burned, his eyes stung. The woman's hands were still locked onto his forearm, her grip so tight he could feel her fingernails cutting into his skin through his sleeve. She was panicking, kicking wildly. Every kick pushed them both deeper. Bryce's shoulder hit something solid. A rock. The impact sent a bolt of pain down his arm, but it told him which way was down. He planted his feet on the rock and pushed, hard, straight up. They broke the surface. He gasped. She coughed. Brown water poured out of her mouth. Her eyes were open but unfocused, blank, like she was somewhere else entirely. "Stop kicking!" he yelled. "I got you! Stop kicking!" She didn't stop. Her body had gone full survival mode. Every instinct told her to climb on top of him, climb on top of anything, and she was pulling him under to do it. This is how people drown trying to save someone. He'd read that once, maybe in a pamphlet at the shelter, maybe in a book. It didn't matter now. What mattered was that her weight was pushing his head below the waterline, and the river was dragging them both toward the deeper channel. He swallowed water, choked, kicked his way back up. "Listen to me!" His voice cracked. "I need you to float on your back. Can you do that?" Nothing. Just wide eyes and clawing hands. He tried again, louder this time. "Hey! Look at me! Look at me!" Something shifted in her face. A flicker. Recognition that another human being was here, in this water, trying to keep her alive. "On your back," he said. "I'll pull you. Just float." She didn't float, but she stopped climbing. That was enough. Bryce hooked his right arm under her left armpit and across her chest. He turned toward the bank, or what he hoped was the bank, and kicked. The current fought him with every stroke. His legs were cramping. His arms were shaking. The cold had seeped past his muscles and into his bones, and it was whispering to him now. Just let go. Just stop. Just let the river have this one. He kicked harder. His free hand scraped against something rough. A tree root jutting out from the eroded bank. He grabbed it. The bark bit into his palm. He held on. The current pulled at his legs like hands trying to drag him back. The woman was dead weight against his chest. His grip was slipping, one finger at a time. The root was wet and his hands were numb, and everything inside him was screaming to let go. He didn't let go. He pulled, inch by inch, his elbow hooked over the root, then his shoulder. Then he dragged her forward until her torso was resting on the muddy bank, half in the water, half out. He crawled up beside her, got halfway onto the bank, and collapsed, face first, into the mud. Rolled onto his back, stared at the gray sky. His vision blurred, came back, blurred again. His chest was heaving. His hands were bleeding, both palms torn open from the rocks and the tree bark. The cut on his shoulder pulsed with a dull, deep ache that radiated down into his elbow. His left leg was shaking so hard he couldn't have stood if he'd tried. He could hear the river behind him, still rushing, still hungry, still not caring about what it had almost taken. The woman was lying on her side, coughing up water in violent spasms. Each cough shook her whole body. When it finally stopped, she just lay there, breathing, shaking, alive. Bryce sat up, peeled off his hoodie, the only warm thing he owned, and draped it over her shoulders. She was wearing a white blouse that had gone see-through from the water. Her hands were trembling so badly she couldn't grip the fabric. He tucked it around her, didn't say a word. A jogger appeared on the trail above them, a man in a gray tracksuit who stopped dead when he saw two soaking, bleeding people lying on the riverbank. "Oh my God, what happened?" "She fell in," Bryce said. His voice was barely there. "Call 911. The jogger fumbled with his phone, hands shaking almost as much as the woman's. Bryce looked at her. "What's your name?" She blinked, swallowed. Her lips were blue. "Lily," she said. "Lily Dawson." The name meant nothing to him. Not yet. He didn't know that the security camera on the footbridge had captured everything, from the moment he dropped his backpack to the moment he crawled onto the bank. He didn't know that the footage would be pulled by the Ridgeton Police Department within the hour. He didn't know that by tomorrow morning, that footage would be sitting on the desk of a man whose name made gas station clerks stop talking and bar owners lock their doors.
All Bryce knew was that his hands were bleeding, his hoodie was gone, and tonight he'd be sleeping in the cold without it. He stood up, looked at Lily one more time, and then he walked away. The ambulance arrived in 7 minutes. 2 paramedics, a fire truck behind them because that's protocol when someone goes into the water.
Lily Dawson was wrapped in a thermal blanket and loaded onto a stretcher. Her vitals were stable, but her body temperature had dropped to 94 degrees. Mild hypothermia. She'd need monitoring, IV fluids, a warm room, and someone to watch her through the night. Bryce was sitting on a rock 15 feet away when the second paramedic walked over. "Sir, we need to check you out too. You've got lacerations on both hands and what looks like a shoulder contusion."
Bryce looked at his hands. He hadn't really noticed the cuts until now. The adrenaline was wearing off, and everything was starting to hurt at once. His shoulder, his ribs, the scrape along his left knee where he'd hit the riverbed. "I'm fine," he said. "You're bleeding. We need to—" "I don't have insurance." The paramedic paused. That pause said everything. It was the pause of a man who'd heard that sentence 100 times and never once had a good answer for it.
"We can still treat you on site. No transport. No charge."
Bryce let him clean the cuts, gauze and antiseptic. The paramedic wrapped his right hand and told him to keep it dry for 3 days. Bryce almost laughed. Keep it dry, as if he had a sink and a medicine cabinet and a bathroom with a lock on the door. A police officer took his statement. Name, age, what happened. "Address?" the officer asked. Bryce stared at him. "I don't have one."
The officer wrote something on his notepad. Bryce couldn't see what. Probably NFA, no fixed address. 3 letters that turned a person into a category. "Phone number?" "Don't have one." The officer closed his notepad. "Well, you did a brave thing today, son. That girl would have drowned." Bryce nodded. The officer walked back to his cruiser. That was the extent of the system's gratitude. A sentence and a nod and a notepad that would go into a filing cabinet nobody opened. Lily was already in the ambulance. The doors were closing. But before they shut, she turned her head and looked at him through the narrow window. "Thank you," she mouthed. He raised his bandaged hand. A small wave. Then the doors closed, and the ambulance pulled away. And she was gone. The jogger had left. The fire truck had left. The police cruiser was pulling out. Within 20 minutes, the riverbank was empty again. Just mud and footprints and a gray backpack sitting exactly where Bryce had dropped it. He picked it up, unzipped it. Water dripped from the bottom seam. The algebra textbook was soaked through, pages swollen and wrinkled, fused together at the edges. The ink had bled on chapters 6 through 9, the chapters on quadratic functions, the ones he'd been working through that week. He peeled 2 pages apart. The equations were gone, smeared into blue ghosts of what they used to be. He held the book for a long moment, then put it back in the bag. He didn't have his hoodie anymore. Lily still had it. He'd forgotten to ask for it back. Or maybe he hadn't forgotten. Maybe giving away the only warm thing you own is easier when you've already decided you don't matter that much. That night, Bryce slept behind the laundromat in a t-shirt and wet jeans. The dryer vents pushed warm air against his back. The temperature dropped to 41 degrees. He curled into himself and shivered until his body gave up and let him sleep. No one came looking for him. Not yet. Colt Dawson didn't get phone calls that made him sit down. He'd been president of the Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club for 11 years. He'd buried friends. He'd walked away from wrecks that should have killed him. He'd stared down men twice his size across bar counters and county lines and never blinked. But when his daughter's voice came through the phone, shaking, broken, barely holding together, he sat down. "Daddy, I fell in the river." He was at the hospital in 14 minutes. Broke 3 traffic laws getting there. His Harley took the corners so hard his knee nearly touched asphalt. Lily was in a bed, warm, breathing, IV dripping. A nurse was checking her temperature every 30 minutes. She looked small in that bed, smaller than he remembered, and she was wearing someone else's hoodie, gray, oversized, torn at the left pocket. "Whose is that?" he asked. "The boy who pulled me out." Colt looked at the hoodie, looked at his daughter. The math was simple. Someone had given his kid the only layer they had in weather that was heading below 40. What boy? Lily told him everything. The river, the current, the screaming, the kid who came out of nowhere and jumped in without a second thought. How he'd fought the water with her on his arm. How he'd grabbed a tree root with one hand and pulled them both to shore. How he'd taken off his hoodie and put it around her shoulders and then just walked away. "He didn't even ask my name first," she said. "I told him after. He just left." Colt sat in the plastic chair beside her bed. He didn't say anything for a long time. His jaw worked like he was chewing on something he couldn't swallow. "The police have footage," Lily added. "Camera on the bridge." Colt made one call, not to the police, to Grayson Pike, the club's sergeant-at-arms, who had a cousin in the Ridgeton PD. 30 minutes later, Colt was watching the footage on a phone screen in the hospital hallway. He watched it 3 times. The first time, he watched the kid run. Full sprint down the bank. No hesitation, no looking around for help. Just a straight line from the trail to the water, like there was a rope tied between him and the drowning woman, and nothing in the world could have stopped him. The second time, he watched the kid go under. Both of them disappearing below the surface. 7 seconds. 8. 9. And then up. Choking, fighting, the kid pulling Lily with one arm while the river tried to take them both. The third time, he watched the end. The kid sitting on the rock while the ambulance took Lily away. Picking up a soaking wet backpack. Walking off alone into the tree line. No ride. No phone. No one. Colt put the phone down. "Who is he?" he asked Grayson. "Kid named Bryce Foster, 19. No address on file. No family listed. Officer marked him in FA. Homeless? Looks like it." Colt stared at the wall. His knuckles were white around the phone. He'd spent his whole life in a world where debts were paid. Where loyalty was currency. Where you didn't let a favor sit unanswered because that's how you lost respect. And respect was the only thing between order and chaos. A kid with nothing had risked his life for Colt's daughter. And right now, that kid was sleeping somewhere in the cold without a jacket because he'd given it to Lily. Colt stood up. "Find him," he said. "Tonight." They found him at 11:40 p.m. 6 Harleys rolled down Cedar Street in a low, rumbling convoy that shook the windows of every shop on the block. The sound was unmistakable. Not engines, not machines. Thunder with a heartbeat. Bryce was behind the laundromat, curled against the wall, half asleep. The dryer vents had stopped pushing warm air an hour ago because the last load was done and Gloria had locked up and gone home. He heard the bikes before he saw the headlights. Then the headlights found him. 6 white beams cutting through the dark like searchlights, and he was on his feet before his brain finished waking up. 6 men, leather vests, patches, boots on gravel, the Iron Wolves logo stitched across every back, a snarling wolf's skull over crossed pistons. Bryce's stomach dropped. He'd seen these guys around town. Everyone had. You didn't talk to them. You didn't look at them too long. You definitely didn't owe them money or cross their path after dark. And here they were, in the alley behind the laundromat, at midnight, looking right at him. He thought about running. There was a gap in the chain-link fence behind the dumpster. He'd used it before. But his legs were still sore from the river. His shoulder throbbed, and something in the way these men stood told him running would only make it worse. The group parted. A 7th man stepped through. He was taller than the others, broader, gray hair pulled back in a short ponytail, a beard that looked like it had been there since the 90s, arms covered in tattoos that disappeared under rolled-up sleeves. His vest had more patches than anyone else's. President patch on the front, riding years on the side. Colt Dawson. He stopped 3 feet from Bryce, looked him up and down, took in the wet jeans, the t-shirt, the bandaged hands, the bare arms covered in goosebumps. The silence lasted 5 seconds. It felt like 5 hours. You pulled my daughter out of that river. It wasn't a question. Bryce swallowed. She was drowning. I know what you did. I watched the tape. Another silence. Colt's eyes moved to the backpack on the ground, to the space behind the laundromat where a flattened cardboard box served as a mattress, to the empty water bottle and the wet algebra textbook drying on top of a crate. His expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. "How long you been out here?" Colt asked. "A while." "How long?" Bryce looked at the ground. "About a year." Colt nodded, slow, like the answer physically settled into his chest. "You eat today?" "This morning. The lady who runs the place leaves." "That's not what I asked. Did you eat a meal today?" "No, sir." Colt turned to one of his men. "Pike, call Donna. Tell her to set an extra plate." Then he looked back at Bryce. "You're coming to my house. You're going to eat. You're going to sleep in a bed. And tomorrow, we're going to have a conversation about what happens next." Bryce didn't move. "I'm not asking," Colt said. It wasn't a threat. It was the voice of a man who'd already made a decision and wasn't interested in hearing why it shouldn't happen. Bryce picked up his backpack, the wet algebra textbook, the empty water bottle. Everything he owned in the world fit in his arms. He climbed onto the back of a Harley for the first time in his life. And for the first time in 14 months, Bryce Foster didn't sleep outside. The Dawson house sat at the end of a gravel road 3 miles outside of town. 2 stories, wraparound porch, a garage big enough for 4 bikes, and the kind of quiet that only exists when you're far enough from other people that nobody hears you. Bryce sat at the kitchen table and ate a plate of meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans that Colt's wife, Donna, had reheated without a single question. She just set the plate down, poured a glass of sweet tea, and went back to the living room. He ate slowly at first, then faster. Then he stopped himself because he didn't want to look like what he was, a person who hadn't had a hot meal in 11 days. Lily came downstairs. She was wearing sweatpants and a flannel shirt, and her hair was still damp from a shower. She stopped when she saw Bryce at the table. "It's you," she said. "It's me." She sat across from him, didn't say anything for a moment, just looked at him like she was still trying to reconcile the person who'd pulled her out of the river with the person sitting in her father's kitchen eating leftover meatloaf. "Thank you," she said. "I mean, I said it before, at the river, but I don't think I really said it." Bryce set down his fork. "You don't have to keep thanking me. You almost died. So did you." That ended the conversation for a while. Some debts are too big for words, so people just sit with them. Colt showed Bryce to a room upstairs, a guest room with a single bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out over the back field. Clean sheets, a pillow with an actual pillowcase. "Stay as long as you need," Colt said, and closed the door. Bryce sat on the edge of the bed, put his hand on the pillow, pressed it down, watched it spring back up. He did it 3 more times, like he was testing whether it was real. He didn't cry. He wanted to, but somewhere along the way, he'd forgotten how to start. The next morning, the trouble began. Wade Prescott showed up at 9 a.m. Vice president of the Iron Wolves. Buzzcut, square jaw, a man built like a cinder block with the personality to match. He didn't knock. He walked in through the side door the way he always did, poured himself a coffee, and stopped dead when he saw Bryce sitting at the breakfast table. "Who the hell is this?" "Bryce Foster," Colt said from behind his own mug. "He's staying here for a bit." "Staying here." Wade repeated it flat, like the words didn't fit together. "He pulled Lily out of the river." "I heard, and that's great. By a mistake. Give him a handshake. But he's not club business, Colt. He's my business. Your business is the club's business. That's the whole point." Wade set his mug down. "You don't know this kid. You don't know where he's from, what he's done, who he owes. And now he's sleeping under your roof, where your family sleeps?" Colt didn't answer right away. He took a long sip of his coffee. The kitchen was quiet except for the clock on the wall. "Are you done?" Colt asked. "No, I'm not done. I've got 8 guys asking me the same thing this morning. 8! You bring a stranger into the president's house without a vote, without a background check, without so much as a conversation with the table. And you think nobody's going to say something?" "I didn't need a vote to save my daughter." "Nobody's arguing about your daughter. I'm arguing about him." Wade pointed at Bryce without looking at him, like he was furniture, like he wasn't sitting right there, hearing every word, feeling every one of them land in his chest like a fist. Bryce stood up. "I can go." "Sit down," Colt said. "Colt," Wade started. "I said sit down." This time it was aimed at both of them. Wade left 20 minutes later. He didn't slam the door. He didn't need to. The damage was already done. Every word he'd said was now echoing through the club, through text messages, phone calls, parking lot conversations, and by noon, the Iron Wolves were split. Half stood with Colt. The man had a right to help whoever he wanted. Half stood with Wade. The club had rules, and rules don't bend because someone's daughter got wet. Bryce heard all of it. Through walls. Through phone calls Colt took in the garage. Through Donna's tight-lipped silence at lunch. That night, he packed his backpack. Nah, this is insane. Imagine you almost die saving a stranger, and the reward is people arguing whether you deserve a pillow? Put yourself there, soaking wet, bleeding, and some dude points at you like you're a problem. How would that feel? Bryce moved through the dark house at 4:47 in the morning. He'd been awake for 2 hours. Lying in that bed with the clean sheets and the real pillow, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence of a house that wasn't his. Every minute he stayed felt like stealing. Every breath he took in that room cost someone something. A fight with their vice president, a crack in their club, a conversation they shouldn't have had to have. He zipped the backpack slowly, put his shoes on without tying them, left the bed made the way he'd found it, tucked, smooth, like no one had been there at all. The hallway was dark. The stairs creaked on the fourth step, and he froze. Nothing. He kept going. He was reaching for the front door handle when the light came on. Where exactly do you think you're going? Lily was standing at the bottom of the second staircase, arms crossed, hair tied back, eyes wide awake, like she'd been waiting for this. I'm making things worse, Bryce said. Your dad's got problems because of me. I heard what that guy said yesterday. He's right. I'm not club business. I shouldn't be here. You saved my life, and you're leaving because someone said something stupid? It's not just someone, it's half the club. Half the club didn't almost drown in that river. I did. Bryce tightened his grip on the backpack strap. Your dad's been good to me. Better than anyone's been in a long time, and I'm not going to repay that by tearing his club apart. Then stay and let him handle his club. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. Footsteps on the stairs, heavy ones. Colt appeared in the hallway, wearing a flannel robe and the expression of a man who'd heard everything and was done listening. Put the bag down, Bryce. Mr. Dawson, I didn't stutter. Put the bag down. Bryce lowered the backpack to the floor. Colt walked past him to the kitchen, turned on the coffee maker. The machine hissed and gurgled in the silence. He poured 2 mugs, set one in front of Bryce. Wade has been my VP for 9 years, Colt said. He's loyal, he's smart, and he's wrong. And he knows he's wrong, which is why he's making noise. Because noise is what people make when they don't have an argument. He took a sip. You didn't ask to be here. You didn't ask for any of this. You jumped in a river because a woman was drowning, and that was enough. That's more than most people do in their entire lives. Colt set the mug down. I'm calling church tonight. Church. Club meeting. The kind where votes happen and decisions stick. At 7 p.m., the Iron Wolves gathered in the garage behind Colt's house. 18 members. Folding chairs arranged in a circle. The room smelled like motor oil and cigarette smoke and tension. Bryce wasn't invited. He sat upstairs in the guest room with the door closed, hearing nothing but muffled voices and the occasional bang of a fist on a table. Colt stood in the center. He didn't open with a speech. He opened with the footage. He'd had Grayson Pike hook a laptop to the wall-mounted TV. The security camera video played on a 42-inch screen in perfect clarity. No sound, just the image. A kid running down a riverbank. Full sprint, no pause, no looking around. A woman disappearing underwater, once, twice, 3 times. The kid hitting the water without breaking stride. Both of them going under. 7 seconds of nothing. The surface still and flat like glass. 8 seconds. 9. Then the water breaking and 2 bodies clawing their way to shore. The kid dragging the woman onto the mud with one arm. Collapsing beside her. Not moving for a long time. When it ended, Colt didn't replay it. He didn't need to. Every man in that room had already memorized it. That kid is 19 years old, he said. No family, no home, no money. He's been sleeping behind a laundromat on Cedar Street for the past year. He owns a backpack, a pair of jeans, and a math book. He looked at Wade. He had one hoodie. He gave it to my daughter because she was cold. Then he walked away in a t-shirt in 40-degree weather. Didn't leave a name. Didn't ask for anything. The police had to track him down because he has no phone and no address. Silence. Now, someone in this room wants to tell me that kid doesn't deserve a roof over his head. I'd like to hear that argument. Right now, out loud, in front of everyone. Nobody spoke. Wade shifted in his chair, crossed his arms, uncrossed them. "We vote," Colt said. "All in favor of the club backing this kid. Housing, school, whatever he needs until he's on his feet." Hands went up, one by one, slowly at first, then faster. 15-4. 2 abstained, 1 against. Wade voted yes. He didn't explain why. He didn't need to. The footage had done what words couldn't. It showed a room full of grown men what courage looks like when it has nothing to gain. Colt walked upstairs, knocked on the guest room door. Bryce opened it, backpack still on the bed, ready to leave at a moment's notice, a reflex built from years of being told he wasn't welcome. "It's done," Colt said. "You're staying. And this time, unpack." The apartment was on the second floor of a brick building on Oak Street. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom. A kitchen with a stove that worked, and a refrigerator that hummed, and a window over the hardware store parking lot. It wasn't much. It was everything. The club pooled the money. 18 members. First month's rent, last month's rent, security deposit. Colt handled the landlord, a man named Holt, who asked too many questions until Colt stopped answering and Holt stopped asking. Bryce walked through the front door, carrying his gray backpack. Grayson Pike was behind him with 2 bags of groceries. Lily followed with a box of kitchen supplies, plates, cups, silverware, towels still in plastic wrap. "It's not a palace," Lily said, "but it's yours." Bryce set the backpack on the counter, opened a cabinet, closed it, turned on the faucet, watched the water run, turned it off, opened the fridge, stared at the empty shelves like they were full of possibility. "You okay?" Lily asked. He nodded. He wasn't okay. He was standing in the first space he'd been allowed to call his own since he was 14, and the weight of that pressed on his chest so hard he couldn't speak. He sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress was new, bought from a furniture store on Route 9 that gave them a discount nobody asked for. He pressed his hand into the sheet, felt it give. He did it again, just like the first night at Colt's house, testing if it was real. This time, it stayed real. The next week moved fast. Colt drove Bryce to Ridgeton Community College on Monday morning. They sat in the admissions office across from a woman named Patterson, who had reading glasses on a chain and a desk covered in sticky notes. She explained enrollment, financial aid, and placement tests, while Bryce listened like every word was oxygen. He took the math placement test that afternoon, alone in a room with a computer and a proctor who gave him 90 minutes. He finished in 38. 93rd percentile. Patterson looked at the score, then at Bryce, then at the score again. "You taught yourself this?" "I had a textbook." "This puts you past college algebra. You're testing into Calculus 1. Colt leaned back in his chair and didn't say a word, but the corner of his mouth moved. Just barely. The club set up a fund. Nothing formal, just an envelope Grayson kept in the clubhouse safe. Members dropped in what they could, 20 here, 50 there. It covered books, a bus pass, and a prepaid phone, Bryce's first phone ever. He held it for 10 minutes before turning it on. There was no one to call, but having it meant someone could call him. That was enough. Lily took him shopping. Jeans that fit, shirts without holes, a winter jacket, shoes with actual soles. He tried on boots at the store and looked at himself in the mirror like he was meeting a stranger. "Those work," Lily said. "These cost $80. That's more than I've had in my pocket in 2 years. Good thing it's not your pocket paying for them." He wore the boots out of the store, left his old shoes in the box on the counter. The cashier looked at the shoes, then at Bryce, and didn't say a word. The video had gotten out. Someone sent the security footage to a local news station. They ran a 60-second piece. "Homeless teen saves woman from river." It picked up online. Then more. Within a week, 2 million views, and a GoFundMe page Bryce didn't know about until Lily showed him. $52,000 from strangers. Bryce stared at the number, scrolled through comments. People from Oregon, Michigan, Florida, Texas, people who'd never meet him, people who saw a 30-second clip and decided this kid deserved a shot. "I don't understand," he said. "You don't have to," Lily said. "Just let it happen." Gloria, the laundromat owner, came by on a Tuesday. She brought a casserole in a glass dish and an apology she'd been carrying for months. "I should have done more," she said. "I knew you were out there every night. I should have—" "You left me food every week," Bryce said. "That mattered more than you know." She cried. Standing in his doorway, holding the empty dish, she cried. Bryce handed her a paper towel from the roll Lily had bought. It was the first time he'd been able to offer someone something from inside his own home. That mattered too. 6 months later, Bryce Foster woke up at 6:15 in the morning. Not behind a laundromat. Not on cardboard. He woke up in a bed, in an apartment with his name on the lease. The alarm on his phone went off, and he turned it off like it was the most normal thing in the world. It still wasn't. Some mornings, he'd lie there for a few extra seconds, just to feel the pillow under his head, to confirm the walls were still there, that the door still had a lock only he controlled. He got dressed. Jeans, clean shirt. The boots Lily had bought him, scuffed and broken in the way boots should be when they belong to someone who uses them. He made coffee. Not from a gas station, from a machine on his counter, with grounds from the store down the street, with water from his own faucet. Then he went for a run. The river trail. The same one he used to walk to avoid the stairs. The same bank where he'd heard Lily scream. The same water that had tried to kill them both. He ran it every morning now. Not away from anything. Just to remind himself how far he'd come from the person who walked this trail with his head down. The semester was halfway done. Calculus 1, 94. English composition, 88. Introduction to engineering, 91. His professors didn't know his story. To them, he was a quiet kid in the third row who turned in work early and asked questions better than the ones in the textbook. He worked part-time at the hardware store below his apartment, stocking shelves, register on weekends. The owner, Peters, had offered the job after seeing the news segment. "It's not charity," Peters had said. "It's $9 an hour, and you're lifting 50-pound bags of concrete. You'll earn it." He earned it. Every Saturday, Bryce volunteered at the Ridgeton Community Shelter. The same shelter he'd slept outside of 2 winters ago, because it was full. He sorted donations, served meals, sat with people who looked the way he used to. Hollow, tired, invisible. He didn't offer advice. He just sat with them. Because sometimes the most valuable thing you can give someone isn't a solution. It's proof that someone sees them. Colt came by on Thursdays. It started as check-ins and became something else. They'd sit at the kitchen table, drink coffee, talk about engines and weather. Sometimes they didn't talk. They just sat, the way fathers and sons do when silence means more than conversation. Lily texted him every day. short messages, dumb memes. Once, she sent a photo of a calculus problem on a billboard and wrote, "This you?" He laughed. Alone in his apartment at 9 o'clock at night, holding a phone with her name on the screen, he laughed. The Iron Wolves voted unanimously to make Bryce their first official scholarship recipient. Not a member, not a prospect. Something new. Something that didn't have a name because it had never existed before. Wade Prescott proposed it. He never explained why. But one afternoon, he showed up at Bryce's apartment with a toolbox and spent 3 hours fixing the kitchen faucet that had dripped since move-in day. When he left, he clapped Bryce on the shoulder. "Faucet's fixed." That was it. That was enough. The GoFundMe sat untouched in a savings account. Bryce told Lily he was saving it for a 4-year university. She told Colt. Colt nodded slow, the way he always did when something landed exactly where it should. There's a line Bryce read once in a book from a shelter donation bin. He didn't remember the author, but he remembered the words. "No one is useless in this world who lightens the burdens of another." He taped it to his refrigerator, right next to his class schedule, and a photo of him and Lily on the Dawson porch, both squinting in the sun, both smiling like people who almost didn't make it. Yo, real talk. Close your eyes. Imagine sleeping behind a building tonight. No phone, no one coming. Now imagine someone finally sees you. Not walks past. Sees you. That's all it took. One person. Just one. Could you be that person?